In the 5th year, Tik Lu Nu Yen, the male protagonist of her salvation story, appeared. Kogan knows that in the future, because she wants to be with the male lead, she will get rid of him, the cruel person who always humiliates her because of her parents. To avoid a dire outcome for himself, he decided to take the initiative and intentionally cooperate with her and the male lead Chu Then, so that he could escape smoothly. He also paid for a high-end death-faking service. But when she received news that he had fallen into the sea and disappeared, Lu Nu Yen, who had always been cold towards him, panicked. She gave up everything she had and crossed the sea just to find Kogan. It turned out that her previous coldness towards him was just to hide her inner inferiority. At this time, in the reception room, the staff gave the newly drafted contract to Kogan. He was not reassured, so he confirmed again. "Does this dummy look like me?" The employee patted his chest and assured, "Don't worry, the models are all made to your exact scale. No one will suspect anything." After receiving the assurance, Kogan finally breathed a sigh of relief, took out the card from his pocket, waved and happily paid, before turning to leave. Upon arriving home, as soon as she opened the door, Lu Nu Yen walked straight to pull Kogan into the bedroom. "Lu Nu Yen, wait!" Kogan reacted strongly, withdrawing his hand from her. Nu Yen's deep, cold eyes like moonlight looked at him intently, as if she didn't understand. "What are you doing? Don't you make me do that every day? Isn't that the condition you set in the beginning?" "No need for now. I'm a bit tired lately." Kogan lowered his head and lied, his words ambiguous. Luckily, she didn't notice, just gently said, "Then I'll go to work." During this period, Lu Nu Yen was indeed very busy. She is preparing for a business project that is in its most important phase. Kogan didn't hold her back, just nodded for her to leave. He originally thought that she would be busy all night tonight, but not long after, she received a hurried phone call and left the office. Seeing that he was still in the living room, her steps suddenly stopped. "If you don't need me anymore, I'll go out. I have important things to take care of tonight." Looking at her cold expression, which rarely showed any signs of haste, Kogan understood everything. "What's so important?" "It's just for the male lead Chu Then." But he didn't say anything, just nodded slightly to let her go. After receiving permission, Lu Nu Yen did not stay any longer and hurriedly passed by Kogan. When she walked to the door and was about to open it to leave, he suddenly called her back. "Lu Nu Yen, actually, I won't have to do that in the future." Hearing Kogan's voice, Lu Nu Yen unconsciously stopped, frowned, and stood there waiting for him to finish speaking. But after touching her impatient eyes, he suddenly choked on his words. "You go." In the end, Kogan still didn't say the rest of the sentence, just told her to leave first. It wasn't until her back completely disappeared that he softly said, "Actually, you don't have to do this anymore, because I'm about to leave." As a young man from a rich family in the capital, Kogan had money, was handsome, and had a perfect six-pack body, so he did many extravagant things. But the most extravagant was during my first year of college. He used the money to buy a girl. She is a famous beauty queen of Canton University, with countless male students flocking to pursue her from school to school. But she has a cold, indifferent personality, treats everyone fairly, refuses everyone, and is only busy studying and working part-time every day. Kogan fell in love with Lu Nu Yen at first sight and just wanted to pick this high mountain flower to keep as his own. So, after learning that her parents had both passed away and she had grown up with her grandmother, since she was a child, her grandmother had been bedridden in recent years. She had to work part-time to pay for her grandmother's hospital bills. Therefore, he went to Lu Nu Yen and made a deal with her. Kogan will pay her grandmother's hospital bills on her behalf, and she will be his girlfriend, having to come home on time every day according to the prescribed number of times to be intimate with him until he gets bored. At that time, Lu Nu Yen's grandmother's illness was very serious and she urgently needed a large amount of money to save her only relative, so she agreed. 5 years have passed. Kogan and Lu Nu Yen have both graduated from college and gone to work, but their relationship has not changed. Lu Nu Yen's grandmother's illness has not recovered yet, and Kogan is still not bored. Lu Nu Yen still lives in Kogan's villa. Her attitude towards him remained unchanged, still cold, but he was not discouraged, thinking that if it lasted long enough, one day he would be able to warm her heart. Until a few days ago, he accidentally fell down Tang Bridge and hit his head. Then suddenly woke up and discovered that he was actually living in a novel. The female main character is Lu Nu-yen, and the male main character is Chu Than, her childhood friend, while he is just an evil male supporting character. According to the plot in the novel, the startup project that Lu Nu-yen is preparing will be a great success in 17 days. With this project, she will become a new star in the business world and later climb to the top of the commercial world. The first thing she did after her success was to give Ko-gon a large sum of money and then propose to break up. But he did not agree, still clinging to Lu Nu-yen and not letting go. Later, when he saw her and Chu Than becoming closer and closer, he became jealous and tried to harm Chu Than many times. In the end, Lu Nu-yen completely hated him and died miserably on the street. Ko-gon didn't want to believe this myth, and he didn't believe he would do such stupid things. But everything that happened recently almost followed the plot in the novel, and the fact that Lu Nu-yen left him one after another to find Chu Than made him unable to help but face the truth. The male lead and the female lead are each other's destiny. After a week of struggling, Ko-gon finally thought clearly. You can't use your life to gamble. He still has his parents and doesn't want to die to completely escape the plot and change his final outcome. Ko-gon has made a decision. He can't love her anymore. He had to pretend to be dead to leave this place, away from Lu Nu-yen, thinking about what would happen in the future. Ko-gon argued all night and couldn't sleep. That day, Nu-yen did not return, nor did he call to ask about the situation. The next day, he woke up early, showered, and went straight downstairs to have breakfast alone. The villa was unusually quiet, with only the sound of him chewing his food. When he finished eating breakfast, the new butler walked over with a hesitant expression. According to your orders, all the servants have been dismissed. Today I will also return to my old house. Young master, do you really not need servants? No need, Ko-gon shook his head. Because soon I will leave this place. Seeing the butler's worried eyes, he didn't explain much, just went upstairs to get a letter and gave it to the butler, telling him to bring it to his parents. Afraid that his parents would be too sad after he faked his death and left, the letter clearly explained the plan to fake his death. Ko-gon wrote in the letter that after 17 days, he would go abroad to live anonymously so his parents wouldn't have to worry. When the time is right, he will secretly visit them. Ko-gon once thought about bringing his parents with him, but after all, they were old and their inheritance was all here. Furthermore, the story of his enlightenment was too wild to be explained clearly in a few sentences, and might even make them think he was crazy. If his parents also disappeared, Ko-gon was afraid that Lu Yen would become suspicious, so after careful consideration, he finally decided to leave his parents alone and leave. After arranging everything for himself, Ko-gon began planning for Lu Yen. After chasing away all the servants, he took the fruit to visit Lu's grandmother Yen. He doesn't have the manners of a master. Over the years, whenever he has free time, he visits his grandmother. Every time I come, I buy a lot of things to make her happy, talk to her to make her feel less lonely, and teach her how to use the phone so she can watch movies online without going out. Therefore, compared to Lu's coldness like Yen, Lu's grandmother liked Ko-gon very much. Grandma Lu, when do you and Nu-yen plan to get married? When Grandma Lu once again mentioned this matter, Ko-gon's face lost its usual shyness, leaving only a wry smile. In 17 days, he will leave. Even if he doesn't leave, it will be difficult to avoid the tragic ending in the book. The person Lu Yen loves is Chu Than. How can she marry you? Teacher Ko-gon didn't say anything. Grandma Lu couldn't help but sigh, but still comforted her. He understands my granddaughter very well. I know she's not without feelings for you. It's just that the two of you were not platonic at first. There is definitely a problem in her heart. As long as that problem can be resolved, the two of you will definitely live well together. Hearing his grandmother's comforting words, Ko-gon tried to smile, but he knew clearly the content of the novel and knew that from beginning to end, the only person Lu Yen loved was Chu Than. The female lead only loves the male lead. How could she love a cruel male supporting character like him? In the end, he didn't say anything, nor did he refute Grandma Lu's words, but just took out a card. Grandma, when you have a chance, please help me give this card to Lu Yen. This card was originally a business fund that Ko-gon had planned to give to Lu Yen for a long time, but he was afraid of hurting her pride, so he always hesitated not knowing how to give it. Now that he had awakened and decided to leave, he let his grandmother help him. So hopefully, Lu Nuyen can remember the good things about Kogon, and after he faked his death, he won't do anything too outrageous to him again. Grandma Lu glanced at her and could tell that Kogon was worried about something and asked, "Are you and Nuyen arguing again?" Kogon shook his head. "There's no arguing. It's just that I have to go to a very far place soon." Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by a cold voice. "Where are you going?" Kogon turned around and saw Lu Yin behind him, looking at him with a gloomy expression. Next to her is Chu then. Kogon turned away and immediately made an excuse to answer lightly. "I will go traveling in a while." In Lu and Yin's eyes, the two things Kogon likes to do most are being intimate with her and traveling around the world. Therefore, after hearing his answer, she calmed down, did not ask any more questions, obediently led Chu then to sit next to Mrs. Lu's bed, then quietly pushed him to the farthest distance. "Grandma, you don't know how stingy Nuyen is. I just wanted to eat ice cream on the way here, but Nuyen didn't buy it for me. You have to talk to her." As soon as Chu then sat down, he began gossiping, pouting, and telling his injustice. Lu Nuyen looked at Chu then helplessly. Although what she said was a rebuttal, each sentence and each word radiated concern. "Are you going to say it again? Have you forgotten about your stomach disease or something, and you still dare to eat cold food? Don't you remember the last time it hurt so much that you felt like you were dying? And then you said you don't dare to eat cold food again in the future. Who asked me to supervise?" Chu then smiled and blinked a few times. There were clearly 4 people here, but as soon as Lu Yin and Chu then came over, in her eyes there was only him. Kogon, who was pushed to the farthest corner, could only watch. The natural harmony between them made him unable to help but laugh at himself. He will forever be just an outsider in their relationship. But this time, he was no longer as heartbroken as before. This time, he let go of everything. Let go of Lu Yin and let go of all the feelings he had for her. He completely returned her to the male lead. Grandma Lu saw the loneliness in Kogon's eyes, then glanced at Lu as Yin, who was deliberately ignoring him, and then secretly sighed in her heart. "Nuyen, Kogon, I want to eat. Can you two help me wash some?" Grandma Lu spoke up. Kogon and Lu Yin of course did not refuse. She held the fruit basket on the nightstand, and Kogon followed and left the hospital room. But as soon as he walked out the door, his hand was held tightly by her. He was a bit surprised because today she suddenly took the initiative to touch him, but immediately he heard Nuyen's cold voice. "Don't visit your grandmother in the future. It's true that I sold myself to you, but my grandmother didn't." Just one short sentence made Kogon's thoughts immediately become a joke. His heart felt a little bitter. If it were before, he probably would have hastily explained to her that she's been busy lately, and her grandmother is old, so she gets lonely easily. He didn't have any other intentions. He just wanted to spend more time with her. But now, he just bowed his head and calmly said, "Okay." Having finished speaking, Kogon did not wait for her, but went straight to the faucet. Unlike before, he must go with her. Looking at his back as he left, a strange feeling suddenly arose in Lu Yin's heart. From yesterday until now, Kogon's actions seemed to have changed. After washing the fruit, they returned to the hospital room. Chatting for a while, everyone was just about to leave the hospital. Chu then spoke first. "Nuyen, Kogon, is almost time for dinner now. How about we go eat together?" Of course, Lu Nuyen will not refuse Chu Than's offer. As for Kogon, perhaps Nuyen didn't want him to act like a young master and embarrass Chu Than, so she agreed on his behalf before he could answer. After arriving at the restaurant, they followed the waiter into a private room. Nuyen took the menu and ordered. However, it wasn't until all the dishes were brought out that Kogon discovered that all the dishes she ordered were Chu Than's favorite dishes. Perhaps this is the difference between being loved and not being loved. Although Kogon once asked her to remember her preferences, one side was forced, the other side was voluntary. The difference is truly heaven and earth. Luckily, he had predicted this result, so he wasn't too disappointed. Just eat quietly without saying anything. While having a meal in a private room, suddenly there was a loud ringtone from the cell phone. Lu Nuyen picked up the phone and walked out. But Kogon was stunned for a moment when he saw the ring on Chu Than's little finger. "Where did you get that ring from?" Chu then glanced at the ring on his finger. It seemed like he didn't realize the deep meaning of the question. He smiled and replied, "This was given to me by Nuyen. I complimented it on how beautiful it was, so she gave it to me. Hearing that, Kogon's face immediately became ugly. He meticulously crafted this ring for many days, and his hands had countless scratches. Finally, on the anniversary of their love, he personally gave it to Lu like Yen. Inside the ring is also engraved with small words. Kogon will always love Lu like Yen. He gave all his heart and all his love to Nu Yen, but she didn't care at all and conveniently gave it to Chu then. An indescribable anger suddenly arose in Kogon's heart. But in the next moment, the principle appeared in his mind again. The person Lu like Yen loved was originally Chu then, so it was only natural that she didn't pay attention to the gift he gave her. If he picked up on these small things now, wouldn't it make Lu like Yen hate him even more? It was like having a bucket of cold water poured on me. Kogon immediately calmed down and regained his facial expression. Smiling softly, "It's very beautiful and suits you very well." Chu then was originally waiting for Kogon to get angry, but he did not expect him to calmly ignore this matter. His eyes flashed with surprise. He bit his lip, suddenly stood up, enthusiastically scooped up a bowl of soup and gave it to Kogon. "Kogon, don't just eat rice like that. This seafood soup is very delicious. Try some." Kogon is allergic to seafood. Just as he was about to refuse, he saw that Chu then did not give him the bowl of soup, but gently turned his wrist. Within an hour, the bowl of soup fell to the ground. His eyes were full of resentment, the corners of his eyes were red, and his face looked like he was about to cry. Before he could understand what trick Chu then was planning, Lu Nu Yen ran past him like a gust of wind, shielding Chu then behind him. Right after that, her cold eyes looked straight at Kogon. "Kogon, what are you doing?" Zhou Qin stood behind her, promptly adding fuel to the fire. "Nu Yen, it's all because I'm not good. I angered Kogon, so he threw soup at me in anger. I was just burned a little. It's okay, don't blame him. It wasn't me." Kogon heard him change white to black, immediately glared, wanting to explain clearly, but Nu Yen didn't listen. She coldly glanced at him and said, "Kogon, you are so unreasonable." After that, without saying another word, she took Chu Than's hand and left. Looking at her cold back and Chu Than's provocative eyes, Kogon stood there stunned, his heart completely sinking to the bottom of the abyss. What made him even more unexpected was that in the following days, Chu then seemed to discover that this trick was very useful, so he immediately became addicted to slandering him. He first said that his work was sabotaged by him, then told him to order him to be assassinated in the industry. He even said that he went to his house and threw paint, making him uneasy. Lu Nu Yen endured it over and over again, and finally couldn't endure it anymore. As soon as he got home, he grabbed Kogon's neck. "Kogon, if there's anything, just aim at me. Why target Chu then?" After 5 years of forgetting each other, Lu Nu Yen's attitude towards him is always cold. This is the first time I've seen her express emotions like that, but it's to defend Chu then. "I didn't aim at him. Those things weren't done by me." Kogon tried her best to explain, but she was still not convinced. "If it wasn't you, then who else would come in here? You can even buy a girlfriend, so what don't you dare do? Don't let there be a next time. I've given you everything. Why don't you still refuse to let go of the person next to me?" After saying this, Lu Nu Yen's eyes were filled with disappointment. She didn't want to say another word to Kogon and went straight into the living room. He watched her leave, trying to suppress the pain in his heart. It turns out that in Nu Yen's heart, he will forever be someone who is not worthy of trust. But besides the pain, what Kogon felt more was fear. There are only a few days left before he has to leave, but if this situation continues, I'm afraid that before he can fake his death, he will already be dealt with by Lu Nu Yen. That night, Kogon hesitated and couldn't sleep. Thinking and thinking, he finally came up with a way. Immediately drove to Chu Than's house. As soon as he opened his mouth, his first sentence was, "Chu Than, let's reconcile. From now on, I will help you and Lu Nu Yen get together." Hearing that, Chu Than's eyes widened. He couldn't believe it. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Chu Than is the person who best understands how great Kogon's feelings are for Lu Nu Yen. If he didn't like her, why did he volunteer to pay her grandmother's hospital bills for the past 5 years? How could he be coldly rejected by Lu Nu Yen time and time again, but still follow behind her without resentment? But now he actively sought him out, saying he would help him and Lu Nu Yen become a couple. Hearing Chu Than's question, Kogon shook his head. "I'm not talking nonsense. I really want to reconcile with you. You don't need to waste time trying to falsely harm me. I don't have much time left. Soon I will leave Lu Nuyen. You don't need to consider me a rival. Kogon's expression didn't look fake, but Chu then still didn't believe it, only suspecting that this was some kind of trap. Kogon didn't care whether he believed it or not. He only used actions to prove it. The next day, when Lu Nuyen was about to go out, he stopped her and gave her a ticket to the amusement park. Kogon, I bought 2 tickets for tonight. Please come with me. I'm very busy these days, with projects. Nuyen coldly refused, but before she finished speaking, Kogon interrupted her. When we first agreed, you already agreed. Besides going to bed once a day, you can't refuse any of my requests. Just one short sentence stopped all refusals from Lu Nuyen. She frowned and took the ticket, but left even more hastily. Watching her back disappear, Kogon picked up the phone, found Chu Than's number, and called. The other end of the line quickly picked up. Without unnecessary words, he went straight to the point. I sent you the ticket. Have you received it yet? I gave the remaining ticket to Lu Nuyen. Dress a little nicer today. Try to develop feelings for her. Chu then did not expect that Kogon was really serious about pairing him with Lu Nuyen. He half believed, half expectedly, said but just as Kogon was about to hang up, he suddenly asked, "Why did you help me?" The question transmitted through the phone reached Kogon's ears. He was silent for a while, and then finally didn't answer. You don't need to know, just follow the agreement. The call ended. Kogon watched the phone screen gradually darken, and Chu Than's question echoed in his head. Why did you help me? When the game ended, he took the initiative to push Chu Than in front of her. It's late. It's not safe for him to go home alone. I'll drive him home. I'll take a taxi. Right, you don't need to rush back. He's drunk too much. Stay at his house and take care of him more. Having finished speaking, he didn't give her a chance to refuse, put the car keys in her hand, and went straight to the street to wave to the car. After several times like that, Lu Nuyen finally realized something was wrong. Recently, she always meets Chu Than everywhere, at all times. Every time, Kogon left alone, leaving her and Chu Than behind. It was like he was deliberately pushing her into Zhou Chen's arms. A few days later, Lu Nuyen came home drunk after the meeting. Seeing Kogon lying on the bed as if fast asleep, she didn't say a word but walked straight into the bathroom. The sound of running water rang out. Kogon suddenly opened his eyes, glanced at the tightly closed bathroom door, quickly took out his phone and dialed a number. You come to my villa immediately. 20 minutes later, Chu then knocked on the door of the Ko family's villa. He gently opened the door for him, then gave him a set of pajamas. You change this and go to the master bedroom to sleep. Chu then looked at him and then looked at the pajamas in his hand. Seems to have understood something. His heart was pounding like it was about to jump out of his chest. Under Kogon's urging, he woke up, quickly went upstairs to change clothes, and then lay down on the bed. Not long after, the bathroom door suddenly opened. Lu Nuyen only wrapped a towel around her body, wiped her hair, and walked out. She raised her eyes and immediately stopped when she saw a figure on the bed. Perhaps because it had been a long time since they had fulfilled their original agreement. She quickly walked forward and naturally hugged the person on the bed from behind. The voice was hoarse from alcohol. My bee is gone. Before Zhou Shun even realized what that sentence meant, a soft and warm hand was placed on his waist, making his whole body tremble. His breathing suddenly became rapid. A soft laugh rang out from behind. Then kisses passed and fell on his ear and neck little by little. Chu Than could not stand such stimulation and suddenly called Nuyen's name. Lu Nuyen's movements immediately stopped. She quickly left him, her voice filled with surprise. Chu Than. In the living room on the first floor, Lu Nuyen sat on the sofa, her face as black as ink. Her eyes stopped straight at Kogon. What is this all about? Kogon didn't expect Nuyen to find out so quickly. He couldn't help but feel a little guilty, but still found an excuse to hide it. Zhu Than's house had a power outage. I let him come here to sleep for the night. So why does he sleep in the master bedroom? Lu Nuyen clearly did not believe Kogon's reason and continued to ask. He hesitated for a moment before answering. The living room wasn't cleaned yet. I thought it was just for one night, so I let him sleep in the main room. Nuyen's eyes flashed with anger. Her chest rose and fell violently. Obviously, she was angry to the extreme. Although she didn't believe Kogon's words, The most important thing right now was to bring Chu-then back. So Nu Yin tried to suppress her anger, didn't say anything more, pulled Chu-than's hand, and left the villa. When she returned, Ko-gon was in the bedroom. At this moment, there were only 2 people left in the room. Nu Yin no longer hides her anger. She soon discovered his abnormality during this period of time. Until today, she finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Ko-gon, what do you want to do? Why? Have you come up with something new to torture us? Nu Yin's undisguised words made Ko-gon stunned. He didn't expect that she would think like that. His heart felt like someone had hit him with a heavy hammer, both painful and uncomfortable. I just want. Ko-gon was about to explain, but luckily his reason pulled him back in time, not letting him say everything. Nu Yin's eyes were heavy and she continued to ask, what do you want? Say it. After a moment of silence, Ko-gon finally opened his mouth, but did not answer her question. Sorry, I thought you would like it. His apology was like a drop of water overflowing a glass, causing anger in Nu Yin's heart to flare up fiercely. Are you always so self-righteous? Nu Yin coldly left a sentence, and then turned and left the bedroom with a tense atmosphere. Ko-gon looked at her leaving back, vaguely realizing something. That's right. After all, Nu Yin is still his person, but with her personality and principles, no matter how much she likes Chu-then, nothing will cross the line. Fortunately, in just 3 days, it will all be over. In the last days, Ko-gon pulled out everything related to Nu Yin from the villa. Whatever can be thrown away is thrown away, whatever can be burned is burned, and treated thoroughly so nothing remains. From college photos he collected when she attended lectures, to matching items such as combs, slippers, and pajamas, and even the peace talisman he had prayed for her. Each item is a testament to the love that Ko-gon has for Nu Yin. He threw each love letter into the fire. But thoughts accidentally drifted to the past. Actually, at first, Ko-gon pursued Nu Yin in a very normal way. He spent 3 months writing 99 love letters, but in the end, she rejected every love letter. Later, when he saw her having difficulty due to medical expenses, he came up with such a solution. You can help her and also achieve your own wishes. Maybe you're wrong. True love cannot be bought with money. In the novel, it was also written that the female lead Nu Yin only loved the male lead Chu-then. Thinking of this, Ko-gon no longer lingered and decisively threw the last letter into the fire. The large door suddenly opened. As soon as Nu Yin returned, he immediately saw colorful envelopes falling into the fire. She had never read the contents inside, but she was extremely familiar with these envelopes. Because those were the letters that Ko-gon sent to her, but they were all rejected. Nu Yin's heart suddenly skipped a beat. The question burst out of her mouth without thinking. What are you doing? Through the blazing firelight, Ko-gon looked at Nu Yin's blank face, feeling a bit confused. But after a while, he still opened his mouth to answer. Burn things. These things are no longer valuable, so let's burn them. In Nu Yin's heart, an indescribable insecurity suddenly arose. She could sense his changes recently. He always does strange, confusing things. She clearly didn't want to confront him, but when she opened her mouth, she couldn't hold back her irritation. Yes, what you want is already there. These things are of course no longer worth anything. In the past, Nu Yin also made fun of Ko-gon many times. Every time like that, he always seemed sad, but this time there was only strange calm in his heart. Very soon, it will all be over. The sentence had no beginning or end, making Nu Yin feel confused. She didn't know what he was playing. Not wanting to stop any longer, ignoring the burning pile, she turned and went upstairs to the office. Ko-gon still sat there, watching the fire burn the last love letter. With nothing left to burn, the fire gradually died down, eventually disappearing into dust. From now on, Nu Yin, please forget this humiliating memory, and also forget that cruel villain like me. Both you and I, let's start a new life. The next morning, when Nu Yin was about to go out, Ko-gon called her back. Tomorrow is our 5th anniversary. I booked a cruise. Please come with me to the beach to watch the sunset. He always acts arbitrarily. Hopefully this time he won't do anything else. Thinking like that, Nu Yin just coldly said, and left. Perhaps because he was looking forward to something, Ko-gon felt that day passed very quickly. Soon the appointed day arrived, which was also the day he prepared to fake his death and leave. Ko-gon dressed neatly, and took Lu Nu-yen to the pre-booked cruise. The scenery on the yacht is very beautiful. The sunset shines on the sea surface, warm orange rays of light shine on him. The sea and sky blend together, creating a beautiful picture. Lu Nu-yen looked at the scene in front of her. A strange look flashed across her eyes. But at that moment, the rare, quiet atmosphere was broken by the urgent ringing of the phone. Kogan turned his head to look at Nu-yen. At this time, she picked up the phone and talked about work. He knew she was busy with an important project. In just a few hours, her project will officially launch. This will be a turning point in Nu-yen's life. Yen was also his turning point. Lu Nu-yen, if you had money, what would you do? When Kogan asked, Lu and Yen had just ended the call. Hearing his confusing question, she just calmly replied, do what you want to do. Having finished speaking, her face had no unnecessary expressions, as if it was just a casual sentence. But when looking at that face, the face that had never shown any gentleness towards him, Kogan thought to himself, wait until you have money. The first thing you will do will definitely be to get rid of me. But this time, Lu, like Yen, I won't wait for you to make a move anymore. On deck, the waiter began serving food. Soon, the table was filled with exquisite dishes. Sunset is only half left. The two sat opposite each other at the dining table, looking at the delicious food. But Kogan was not interested at all. As for Yen, he was still cold, not saying a single unnecessary word. Until Lu Nu-yen's phone rang again, breaking the silence between them. On the screen flashed the name Chu Then. She was a little stunned, but still answered the phone. As soon as the connection was made, Chu Then's crying voice rang clearly through the phone. Nu-yen, I had a car accident. Can you go to the hospital? Hearing that, Lu Nu-yen frowned and turned to look at Kogan. He just put down his fork and calmly said, I heard it. Do you want to go? Without the slightest hesitation, she replied, the anniversary can be held at any time, but right now Chu Then needs me. Kogan didn't say anything, just looked at her quietly. Looking at his expression at this moment, Lu Yen's heart suddenly pounded. From childhood to adulthood, she had always maintained a terrifying calm, but this was the first time she felt a loss of control. Therefore, she rarely adds a sentence. I will make it up to you later on the anniversary. After speaking, Lu Nu-yen picked up the phone and stood up. Kogan looked at her panicked figure and quickly left the yacht, but did not stop her. A long time later, he whispered, Lu Nu-yen, we won't have a next time. Kogan watched the sunset alone. The last light of the sun is gradually obscured on the sea surface. The lights on the yacht also gradually brightened. A staff member got on the boat and went straight to him. Sir, everything is ready. Hearing the voice, Kogan did not turn around, still looking into the distance, asking, how will I die? If I slip and fall into the sea, an hour later the news will spread. My body will float in the sea for 3 days and 3 nights, then be discovered by the police and confirm my death. The staff details how Kogan will die. He nodded without comment. After arranging everything, he turned back down to the yacht and looked at the city one last time. Then, put on the hat and mask you prepared earlier, break your cell phone SIM card, and walk towards the airport without looking back. Lu Nu-yen, this time I will personally take you to your male protagonist. And I, this evil villain, will completely leave your world. 3 days later, Lu Nu-yen returned to the villa. On her face was a smile that had not been there for a long time, because Chu Than's condition had stabilized and the project that she had been busy with for so long had been a resounding success as soon as it was released. Finally, she can enter the upper class thanks to herself, instead of just selling her body in exchange for medicine money for her grandmother. Lu Nu-yen brought the first amount of money from the project, preparing to return it to Kogan, resolving all resentments. From now on, she can also hold her head high before him. But when I opened the door and entered the villa, it was strangely quiet. There was not a single sound. Kogan, who usually waited for her in the living room, was not present this time. A strange feeling flashed through her heart. Don't know why, Lu Yen's heart suddenly felt empty. Remembering Kogan's strange actions in the past, she felt a little uneasy, thinking whether this was the way he wanted to torture her. Lu Nu-yen wasn't sure, so she took out her phone to text him. But at that moment, a news message appeared on the phone screen. Recently, the only son of the Ko family, the heir to the largest fortune in the city, went missing. Later, his body was discovered at sea. The police confirmed that the body is that of young Master Kogan. The cause of death has not been determined. Just a few short sentences, but it hit Lu and Yin like lightning. She couldn't believe her eyes. I couldn't control my hand and clicked on that news. Although the leaked photos were unclear, she still recognized it as a floating body. Lu Nuyen opened her eyes wide, trying to find evidence to prove that the body was not Kogan. But the more she looked, the more scared she became. That body and outfit are clearly identical to Kogan. When she left, was Kogan already dead? Without seeing his body with his own eyes, Kogan could not have died like that. Thinking so, Lu Nuyen staggered out. Before she could take a few steps, she almost fell several times. She intended to drive to the police station, but when she started the car, her hands were shaking so much that she couldn't hold the keys, so she had to take a taxi to the police station. The car quickly arrived in front of the police station gate. At this moment, Lu Nuyen suddenly felt scared. I wonder if that body is really Kogan. What will she do? The girl has arrived. Won't you get out of the car? The driver waited for a while, looked through the rearview mirror, and saw Lu and Yin's expression constantly changing. Seeing her destination again, he thought she was the person who committed the crime and confessed. In his heart, the driver couldn't help but wonder why such a beautiful girl would end up like this. Lu Nuyen did not understand the driver's thoughts. Hearing him urging her, she suddenly woke up, quickly opened the door, and got out of the car. After explaining the purpose of going to the police station, a police officer led her into the place where the body was kept. When she arrived, she discovered that she was not the first person to arrive. Ko's mother, with her puffy eyes, had clearly just finished crying, while Ko's father seemed calmer, but his eye sockets were inevitably a little red. Seeing someone coming, when they looked up and realized it was Lu Nuyen, their hearts suddenly felt a bit complicated. Even though they read their son's letter and knew that he only faked his death to leave this place, in their hearts they still blamed Lu like Yin. If it weren't for her, their son wouldn't have needed to fake his own death to escape like that. Lu Nuyen, the moment she saw them, her heart completely fell into the abyss. Suddenly, she no longer dared to step forward, nor did she dare to look at the body that was so close. Kogan's body was taken by Ko's parents to be cremated, but on the way, Lu Nuyen stole the jar of ashes. At first, Ko's parents also came and made a fuss, but she refused to let go. Every time the argument ended, she said the same thing. Unless I die, don't try to get the urn back. Lu Nuyen moved out of the villa where they used to live together. When she packed her things, she discovered that all the memories related to the two of them had disappeared, without a trace, linked to Kogan's unusual actions in his final moments. Although the police defined his death as an unfortunate slip and fall into the sea, she insisted that Kogan's death was not an accident, but was planned in advance. That's why he refused to get close to her, wanted to push her towards Chu-then, and cleaned up the memories related to the two of them in the bedroom. Lu Nuyen hugged the urn of ashes tightly in her heart. At her feet were wine bottles lying scattered about. Her eyes were filled with pain, regret, and even a bit of self-mockery. Nuyen took another sip of strong wine. A stinging feeling spread throughout her body. She raised her hand to caress the contours of the urn and closed her eyes. Kogan's smiling face suddenly appeared before her eyes. Kogan and Nuyen are immersed in their world and cannot escape. But the bedroom door was suddenly pushed open by a strong force. The light from outside the door shined straight into the gloomy room. The dazzling light made her unable to help but squint her eyes and raise her head to look forward. A figure walked in from outside. When he saw the situation in the room, his steps suddenly became panicked. He passed the pile of empty wine bottles, rushed in front of Nuyen, tried to take the jar of ashes from her lap, and wanted to help her up. Nuyen's cry of surprise made her realize who the person in front of her was. But her body was. Instinctively, she avoided his hand and hugged the jar tightly to her heart. Her wary eyes made Chu-then feel a pang of pain, but seeing her haggard face and bloodshot red eyes, his voice couldn't help but soften. If this continues like this, something will happen. Please put the jar down first. Can we go to the hospital? Hearing his voice, Nuyen's eyes moved slightly, finally looking straight at Chu-then. Her voice was calm, but carried a bit of questioning. You also know about this, right? Chu-then was stunned for a long time before responding to Nuyen's question. His face immediately changed, showing resentment, An expression as if how could you think of me like that? Voice full of injustice. I really didn't know anything. At that time, Kogan himself came to me and said he wanted to cooperate. So what cooperation? Nguyen immediately grasped the key point, her cold eyes looking straight at Chu Then. He had never seen Nguyen's eyes like that. The hand holding her also unconsciously let go. Finally, under her murderous eyes, Chu Then had to tell the truth. At the end of everything, he didn't forget to ask her a few words. Nguyen, I really just loved you so much, but after that I stopped confronting Kogan. The relationship between you two was originally because he forced me. I didn't like him at all. Now that he's dead, I'm finally free. Shouldn't I be happy? As soon as he finished speaking, Nguyen used her hand to grab Chu Than's neck. Who told you I don't like him? Not long after, large drops of tears fell onto the back of Nguyen's hand, causing her hand to suddenly stop and then quickly let go. A moment later, she turned her back, hiding her cold eyes, and said, Go away, I don't want to see you anymore. Nguyen didn't understand either, but she was very clear that she didn't love him at all. However, like before, she always lost her reason because of Chu Than, over and over again, abandoning Kogan because of him. Just like she didn't always want to confront Kogan, but when the words left her mouth, the meaning unconsciously changed. Nguyen cannot see through her heart, nor can she control her words and actions. It wasn't until Kogan died that the veil covering her heart was lifted. She finally saw her heart clearly, but could not understand her previous actions even more. At that moment, a feeling of false absurdity spread in her heart. 5 years later, in a quiet small bar in a luxurious urban suburb abroad, Ko's parents were afraid that their son living far away from home would be in poverty, so they sent a large sum of money. Finally, Kogan couldn't help but call them. Mom and Dad, how many times have I told you? I live very well here. Don't worry about me anymore, and don't send money like that anymore. 5 years ago, Kogan changed his name to Tong Kan and came here. His parents were worried that living in a foreign land would not be good for him. Over the years, the most they did was send him money. Kogan used that money to open a small bar near the school. Customers are stable. Every year when the old class of customers leave, a new class of guests arrives. Over the years, his life has been really comfortable. It's just that as the number of times they sent money increased, a vague insecurity gradually rose in his heart. Even though he lives abroad, he has never stopped following domestic news. Therefore, he also knows clearly what happened in these 5 years. Lu's grandmother passed away the day before Lu Nguyen became a new business star in the city. Kogan regretted not being able to say goodbye to the old lady one last time, but compared to meeting her, he still valued his life more. Lu Nguyen is truly excellent, exactly as described in the original plot. That's why, over the past 5 years, he has always tried to reduce contact with his parents, worried that if he contacted too much, Nguyen would notice something unusual. If things go back to the way they were, then all his efforts of the past 5 years will go down the drain. I just don't know why. According to the original plot, at this time Nguyen should have expressed her feelings to Chu Then and determined a relationship with him. But in reality, she has been single for 5 years. It is said that she kept the jar for Kogan's bones to carry with her every day. People who didn't know the story all praised her for her deep love, but Kogan felt that she definitely had some other purpose in keeping the jar for the bones. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but shiver, silently telling himself that he must minimize contact home in the future. Suddenly, there was a knock on the bar from behind. Kogan instinctively turned his head and immediately encountered a pair of deep eyes. "Boss, give me a glass of margarita." The voice was so familiar that even if I hadn't heard it for a long time, Kogan couldn't forget it. Added to that was the face that had spent so many days and nights with him. Kogan felt like his heart skipped a beat and stood frozen on the spot. "Boss." Lu Nguyen raised her eyebrows and raised her voice to call again. Kogan was flustered, hurriedly hung up. The call was still unfinished, filled with regret. He already knew that if he had many domestic contacts, with Nguyen's intelligence, sooner or later she would discover that he was not dead. It's just that he didn't expect her to come so quickly, making him unable to keep up. Kogan tried to appear calm, pointed at the temporarily suspended sign hanging on the transparent partition, and deliberately lowered his voice. "Today is a holiday, not open." Lu Nguyen laughed softly, lifted the board, and turned the front face towards him. On the sign clearly read, "Open." Her eyes were full of interest. If I'm not mistaken, the temporary break announcement should be for guests to see, right? Ko-gon was stunned. His eyes fell on the board in Nguyen's hand. At this point, he realized he had forgotten to turn the board over, and his face immediately showed confusion. Quickly grabbed the sign and hung it with the temporarily suspended side facing out. "It's over now, ma'am. The bar is temporarily closed today. If you want a drink, you'd better find another bar." After dismissing the guests, Ko-gon bowed his head and continued to get busy. But the woman standing in front of the bar still refused to leave. While he was still wondering whether to speak again or not, Lu Nguyen spoke first. "Boss, it seems like we've met somewhere before, right? Why did Lu Nguyen become so clingy?" Ko-gon tried to hide the doubts in his heart, not daring to ask too many questions. Lu Nguyen still stood there waiting for his answer. It wasn't until he reluctantly nodded that she left with a satisfied smile. Ko-gon really couldn't understand what Lu Nguyen was trying to do. Only when he saw her figure completely disappear did he take out his phone to call his parents. The phone is quickly connected. "Ko-gon, what's wrong? Is something wrong?" Lu Nguyen came to me. "Mom and Dad, what happened in the past few years? Why do I feel like she's changed so much?" On the other end of the line, the parents tried to be silent for a moment and then hesitated to ask again. "The reason why you decided to fake your death that year. 5 years have passed, and now you're bringing this up again." Ko-gon thought for a moment and then decided not to hide it, saying he had seen a strange dream. That year, their parents did not agree to let them be together. Not because Lu Nguyen is poor, nor because they feel she is not worthy, but because in their eyes, Lu Nguyen does not love Ko-gon. If you continue to force it, the only person who will suffer in the end can only be you. Ko-gon is the son they love very much. How could they have the heart to see their children suffer? But at that time, Ko-gon was too stubborn, affirming that Lu Nguyen was the girl of his life. Even if he hit a dead end, he would not turn back. In the end, when he really hit a dead end, he realized his parents were right. But now, their attitude has changed again. Over the past few years, Ko-gon's parents have also witnessed Lu Nguyen step by step becoming the person she is today. Parents feel that she really loves her child. If it's all just a dream, then go back. As soon as Ko's mother's voice ended, Ko's father's voice also rang out. "That's right, Ko-gon. Besides, you also said that she found you, so what? It's been 5 years, come back. Mom and Dad will get through this with you, okay?" In the end, Ko-gon still did not immediately agree. The story of a man becoming enlightened sounds too fantastic. His parents didn't believe that was also in his expectations. As for Lu Nguyen loving him, he doesn't believe it. They were together for 6 years. If only he had felt even a little bit of love from Lu Nguyen, perhaps he would not have chosen to fake his death and leave. Currently, Lu Nguyen is not with Nam Chin in her destiny, but chooses to keep it for Ko-gon. People say that proves she loves him, but who knows if it was because he faked his death that caused her life to go off track. Then one day, will she return to her correct orbit? That night, Ko-gon struggled and couldn't sleep. It wasn't until morning that he fell asleep. When I woke up, it was afternoon. Strangely enough, this sleep was extremely delicious, so delicious that when he woke up, Ko-gon still felt confused. His mind was empty, as if he had just returned from a long dream. He sat dumbfounded on the bed for a long time before remembering everything. After remembering, he immediately jumped up and rushed to Ma's shop. Sure enough, Lu Nguyen was waiting outside, but she didn't come alone. Besides, there were also a few familiar guests from the past. If he had said a few days ago that the shop would be temporarily closed for a while, they would not have come. Even if they did, it would only be a few people. But now, the crowd gathered right in front of the restaurant, bustling with excitement. No need to guess, Ko-gon knew for sure that it was Lu Nguyen who called them. Lu Nguyen saw him from afar. Her originally quiet face suddenly showed a light smile. She stepped forward, her tone full of meaning. "Boss, you're finally here." As soon as he saw Lu Nguyen, Ko-gon's steps suddenly stopped. The newly arranged memories suddenly became chaotic in his eyes. There was a flash of darkness, but in just a moment, he was back to normal. After greeting each regular customer in turn, Ko-gon took the key to open the door. As soon as he pushed the door open and walked in, he discovered that Lu Nguyen immediately followed closely behind. An indescribable feeling of frustration suddenly arose in his heart. He chose to leave, but gave the position to Chu Then. Yet she didn't stay in the country and be with Nam Chin, so why did she run to find him? It quickly became bustling. Kogan mixed wine for guests, feeling confused by his strange actions and emotions. It's strange, since Lu Nuyen appeared, his memories seemed to have begun to become confused. For a moment, he even felt like he was no longer himself. Although that strange feeling didn't last too long, he eventually realized that the source of all these changes was Lu Nuyen. She sat down in front of the bar, ordering a margarita like she did yesterday. This cocktail is not difficult to make. Before long, Kogan placed a glass of wine in front of her. "Miss, here is your wine." Lu Nuyen took the glass, but did not drink. His eyes looked intently at Kogan and suddenly said, "My name is Lu Nuyen." "Okay, Miss Lu." Kogan tried to answer calmly, his expression not wavering at all, as if he really didn't know her. His reaction made Lu Nuyen impatient. Before coming here alone, Lu Nuyen investigated him very carefully. A month ago, she began to discover unusual things from the Ko family. From the moment she saw Kogan's body, she had never seen his parents truly in pain like people who lose children often see. At first, she thought maybe they were hiding their pain inside, but then she discovered that over the past 5 years, the Ko family had regularly sent large sums of money abroad. Through investigation, she learned that the Ko family was hiding a huge secret. Tong Kan and Ko Gon, two identical faces, identical bodies, similar ages. One person disappears, then the other suddenly appears. If there is only a slight similarity, it can be called a coincidence, but too many similarities can only lead to a single answer. Thinking of this, Lu Nuyen looked at Ko Gon, her voice full of certainty. "Ko Gon, how long are you planning to hide?" Ko Gon raised his head to look at her, trying to hide his confused eyes. "Lu Chu Thursday, have you identified the wrong person? My name is Tong Kan." He was determined not to admit that he was Ko Gon, so what could she do to him? After all, Ko Gon's name was erased 5 years ago. The only person left in this world is Tong Kan. Lu Nuyen did not expect him to react like that, and immediately burst out laughing angrily. "Tong Kan, an orphan, without father or mother. 5 years ago, I went abroad to rely on relatives, but in the past 5 years, my relatives have never appeared here. Furthermore, I often go back and forth with the Ko family, receiving a large sum of money from them every half a year. Mr. Tong, can you explain these things?" Listening to each sentence she exposed, Kogan couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Did she investigate so meticulously? When we were still in love, she never seriously cared about him like that. Yet now, when he changed his identity, she investigated so thoroughly. Kogan was both angry and amused. Her eyes looked even colder. "Miss Lu, you and I have no enmity, no resentment, no relatives. How do you base your investigation on me? Why did I come here? Who did I interact with, it seems?" "It has nothing to do with her," Lu Nuyen choked. After a while, she replied, "I once received favors from the Ko family. You have so many suspicious actions and also received a large sum of money from them. I have the right to suspect you of having bad intentions." Lu Nuyen originally thought that this reason would make Kogan give in, but he just glanced at her and replied faintly, "If I have bad intentions, it's the Ko family's business, not yours. What right do you have to question me? Are you a friend of the Ko family or the guardian of their dead son?" The 4 words "object of support" were like a sharp blade piercing straight into Lu Nuyen's heart, making her eyes immediately turn red. She pursed her lips tightly, looked at him deeply with hurt eyes, then turned and left without saying a word. When Lu Nuyen walked out of Ba's restaurant, the atmosphere around her became heavy, a gloomy feeling. Kogan stood behind. For some reason, he felt a trace of loneliness in her back. He opened his mouth to say something, but in the end he didn't call her back. After all, during the 6 years they were together, didn't Lu Nuyen always think like that? He paid, and she sold herself. That sentence was said countless times by Lu Nuyen himself. So now, why are you still acting so pitiful? But Kogan also clearly understood that once Lu Nuyen came here, he would definitely not give up because of today's failure. It seemed like if he wanted to have a peaceful life, he had to move somewhere else. It's a pity that this bar restaurant, where he spent 5 years of his life, was finally disturbed by the appearance of Lu Nuyen. Kogan walked out the door, locked the bar, then slowly walked upstairs. Lying in bed, he still couldn't understand why Lu Nu-yin did all of this. Is it just to get revenge for the fact that he spent money to buy her that year? But he made it up to her later. But this was originally voluntary, and both of them benefited. If she had any resentment, it all should have ended the day Kogan faked her death and left. Why did she have to chase you all the way here? Kogan couldn't think of anything, so he stopped thinking and just fell asleep. Outside bar restaurant, Lu Nu-yin did not leave as Kogan expected. The car had not yet started. She sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel, her heart filled with bitterness. In your eyes, the object of patronage, am I really just an object of patronage? The next day, information about the restaurant's transfer was posted. Kogan did not keep any of the tools in Ba's restaurant. Luckily, the next owner also planned to open Ba restaurant, so I gave it all to him. Everything happened so fast that Lu Nu-yin was stunned. She didn't even know when he left. But that made her even more certain of the guess in her heart. He was Kogan. Kogan originally intended to leave this place to go to another country, but unexpectedly, he was stopped by Lu Nu-yin at the airport. If you're not Kogan, why do you have to hide? Until today, Lu Nu-yin still does not understand why Kogan faked his death and left that year. Faced with her questioning, a vague light suddenly flashed in his eyes. Hiding from me? Hiding from what? What am I afraid of? His mind suddenly became chaotic. His memories seemed to be turned upside down and then reassembled in an instant. He was sweating profusely. His lips were pale. Lu Nu-yin was frightened by the events before her eyes. Her heart was beating wildly. Seeing that his legs were weak and about to fall to the ground, she quickly caught him. Kogan, don't be afraid. I'll take you to the hospital. As soon as he finished speaking, Kogan's breathing gradually stabilized. He shook his head and said softly, I want to go home. Seeing that Kogan was calm, Lu Nu-yin breathed a sigh of relief. But when she heard him mention home, she suddenly felt confused, not knowing which house he wanted to return to. Kogan saw her confusion, sighed, then went to the ticket counter to buy the nearest flight back home. Seeing this, Lu Nu-yin also bought a ticket to go with him. Why did you look for me on the flight back to your country? Finally, Kogan also gave up hiding his identity, because he knew Lu Nu-yin had been sure about this for a long time. But there is a more important reason why he decided to return, which is that since the day Lu Nu-yin reappeared, his memory began to be manipulated in a strange way. Kogan is worried that at some point, he will truly forget his name as Kogan, forget his past, and even his parents. Lu Nu-yin looked at Kogan, did not answer but asked back, that year, why did you choose to leave that way? I ask first. You have to answer first. Kogan raised his hand to rub his temple, but after being questioned by her, he felt a sharp headache. Finally, in the long silence, Lu Nu-yin gave up and spoke first. I don't know. I just want to see you one more time, want to see if you're happier without me. Why do you suddenly no longer need me? Because I can't stand a life without you. However, these words were hidden in her heart, deep in silence. In the end, all she could say were 3 words, I don't know. Lu Nu-yin was stunned, not knowing why that feeling of being manipulated came back. She opened her mouth to say something, but couldn't make a sound. In Kogan's ears, the chatter of the surrounding passengers still rang out, so he knew he had not lost his hearing. But strangely, Lu Nu-yin's lips moved, but he did not hear anything. At that moment, he suddenly remembered that his memories had been changed. A ray of light flashed in Kogan's head. He understood the real reason for all this. The world of novels was real, and they were forced to follow the predetermined route. Kogan's supporting character ended in death. Therefore, when he takes the name of Song Can and leaves, nothing will happen to him. However, Kogan was already dead when Lu Nu-yin found him and forced him to admit that he was Kogan. His memory began to become chaotic again. He will gradually forget who he is and truly believe he is Tong Can. The female lead Lu Nu-yin is destined to be with the male lead, so she cannot love anyone else and is not allowed to love anyone else. Even if she truly loves, that feeling will be forcibly erased. Therefore, even if he returns to his country, there will still be no result between the two of them. Because in Lu Nu-yin's world, Kogan can only be a person who has died long ago. Therefore, now he actually lives under the name Tong Can. When the plane landed, Tong Can did not stop, nor did he turn his head to look at Lu Nuyen standing there, not even once. Lu Nuyen wanted to chase him, but her legs felt like lead, standing still, unable to move. She could only watch his back getting farther and farther away, finally disappearing in the flow of people passing by, until Chu, then wearing a white shirt, appeared at the airport, waving at her. Nuyen, I'm here to pick you up. When you come back from this business trip, will you bring me fruit? Lu Nuyen looked at Chu, then suddenly appearing in front of her. A special, strange feeling arose in her heart. When she heard him call her trip this time a business trip and happily asked for gifts in such a natural way, that strange feeling became even more intense. Chu then clearly had not appeared since last year when she discovered that he had harmed Kogan and told him to disappear like a broken circle, never mended or repaired, but strangely returned to its original starting point. She didn't know how it all happened, but at this moment she had only one thought in her heart. She didn't want to be a liar controlled by others. The legs that had just been imprisoned before followed Chu Then's footsteps, approaching, gradually relaxing. Nuyen walked towards him, but there was a cold look in her eyes. She seemed to understand why Kogan left so suddenly that year. So now she thinks maybe she needs to try something too. Chu Then's noisy sounds still surrounded Nuyen's ears, causing her head to ache. Suddenly, she stopped walking, looked at him. Her voice was cold, without any emotion. Shut up. Can you be quiet? It's too noisy. Suddenly being scolded by Nuyen, Chu Then's steps stopped. His face clearly showed resentment, but his words still carried a caring tone. Nuyen, what's wrong? Are you too tired? Let's go home quickly. Chu then tried to hold Nuyen's hand, but she withdrew her hand. He tried to talk to Nuyen, but she did not respond. Leaving the airport, the driver was waiting outside and opened the car door. As soon as she got in the car, Nuyen closed her eyes tightly, not paying attention to Chu Then, who was about to talk to her. She couldn't see his resentment, nor did she see a trace of hatred in that resentment. It's all because of the name Kogan. Even though he's dead, it still makes people feel uneasy. Lu Nuyen always treated him like this, indifferent and uncaring, but before that she didn't resist whenever he approached. It was clear that he could sense before that Lu Yin was not completely indifferent towards him. Chu then really thought that Kogan was helping him, but he didn't expect Kogan to have this plot, wanting to make things difficult for everyone. After the hatred reached its peak, Chu then felt extremely helpless. You hate Kogan, but what can you do? Kogan is dead. He has become the bright moonlight in Lu's heart like yin that no one is allowed to touch. Meanwhile, Chu then could do nothing. But very quickly, Chu then discovered he was wrong. The car stopped in front of Lu's villa like yin. She did not enter the house, but went in another direction. Chu then was surprised, quickly got out of the car, and followed her. Nuyen, where are you going? Lu Nuyen walked in front, neither stopping nor answering. Chu then had to follow behind. However, after walking for a while, he noticed something was wrong. Nuyen is walking towards Ko Jia's house. Since Kogan's death, the relationship between Lu Nuyen and Ko Jia has deteriorated rapidly, and she no longer comes to Ko Jia. But today she just returned from a business trip. Why did she suddenly want to go to Ko Jia? Although Lu Yin's villa and the Ko family's villa are in opposite directions, the distance is not very far. So, the two of them didn't walk too long until they arrived at Ko Jia's villa. In the living room, Tongkin had returned home a long time ago, and his parents were now surrounding him asking about his years abroad. He patiently answered. Suddenly, the door rang, and the maid went to open the door. She hesitated for a moment when she saw someone standing outside, but Lu Yin didn't pay attention and rushed in. When Lu Nuyen entered, Chu then naturally could not let her go alone, so he quickly followed. The maid chased after her in panic but could not stop the two people who were going straight into the living room. The living room door suddenly opened. Tongkin reflexively turned his head, just in time to face the eyes of Lu Yin and Chu then. Kogan, are you not dead yet? When he saw Tongkin's face, Chu then couldn't hold back the surprise in his heart and let out a cry of surprise. But right after that, anger welled up in his heart. So that's right, this is Kogan's true plan. Why did he first say he would team up with Lu Nuyen to stabilize his position, then pretend to die to strengthen his position in Lu Nuyen's heart, then wait for the opportunity to return? Only then can he usurp Lu Nuyen. Chu then looked at him, his eyes filled with hatred that was almost impossible to hide. His straightforward look also attracted the attention of Ko's parents, making them frown. The maid ran out of breath into the living room, saw the 5 people she had met, and hurriedly said, "Sorry, sir, ma'am. They entered voluntarily. I can't stop them." Mother Ko waved her hand to signal the maid to step back. She breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly left the living room. As soon as the door was closed, Tonkin looked at them, his tone a bit unhappy. "Lu Chu Thursday, and truth you don't know what you two want to do by breaking into someone else's house like that?" Lu Nuyen knew her actions were not polite, but she knew that if she waited for the maid to tell her, she might not be able to meet Kogon, so she had to apologize. "Sorry, Kogon. But I just wanted to talk to you, nothing else." After talking about his business, thinking of Chu then still chasing her, he couldn't help but frown in frustration. She had never felt that Chu then was like a fried piece of cake that couldn't be thrown away. No matter where she went, he followed closely. She turned her head to look at Chu then, her eyes clearly showing impatience. "What are you following me for? Don't you have anything to do?" Once again abandoned by me. Zhou Chen started to feel heartbroken again. It's just that Chu then loves Lu like Yin too much, and is too afraid of losing Lu like Yin. But why didn't she let him follow her? They've been together since childhood. Hasn't she always favored him before? However, to avoid making Lu like Yin hate him more, in the end Chu then still chose to leave the living room himself, but did not leave the Ko family's villa. He wandered aimlessly in front of the door, thinking that when they finished talking, he could be the first person to meet Lu like Yin in the living room. Ko's parents glanced at each other, and then turned to look at Tong Kan and Lu like Yin, facing each other in a tense atmosphere. No one spoke. Finally, Ko's father cleared his throat twice to break the almost frozen silence. "We have something to do, so we should go upstairs first. If you two have something to say, sit down and talk properly. Don't always argue or sulk." Having finished speaking, they did not wait for either of them to react, but stood up and went upstairs directly. The living room was large, and for a moment there were only 2 people left. After a moment of silence, Lu Nuyen opened her mouth, "Kogon." But as soon as she spoke, Tonkin coldly interrupted. "If there's something wrong, say it directly. That day I paid to buy you. You were always cold to me. Now the contract has expired. We have broken up. With our current relationship, it seems not to the point where you can call me by my name like that. Furthermore, Kogon is dead. The only person alive now is the child, only adopted by the Ko family, Tong Kan." Hearing the meaning in Tong Kan's words, that he wanted to clearly define boundaries with him, Lu Yin's heart ached. A sentence repeated in her throat countless times, she finally said with difficulty, "Kogon in the past was because I stubbornly refused to admit that the beginning of the relationship was not so good. It was not until I heard the news of your death that I realized how foolish I was before. But Kogon, you have to believe me, I really like you." Before the sentence could finish, Tong Kan coldly interrupted, "Do you like me already?" Lu Nuyen was stunned, not understanding. "What do you mean?" Meanwhile, his expression remained cold, his voice carried no emotion at all. Kogon gets involved with Lu like Yin, there is only one outcome, which is death. Lu like Yin, don't you notice anything strange? The events that happened on the plane appeared clearly in Tong Kan's mind. Even though he hadn't fully awakened yet, even though he didn't know that the fact that he almost fainted was due to a disturbance in his memories, that loss of voice was enough for him to understand that this world had problems. Lu Nuyen remembered the feeling of being blatantly controlled before. She moved her lips but couldn't say a word. Indeed, she realized it, but she did not want to accept her fate. She wants to be with the person she loves and doesn't want to be manipulated to continue on a journey without him. As soon as Ko called out a word, she immediately remembered what Tonkin had said. Being involved with Lu like Yin will only lead to death. She forced herself to change her way of addressing him, looking at him with determined eyes. "Tonkin, I'll wait for you. I will overcome everything to come to you. By then no one will be able to stop us anymore." Tonkin looked at her eloquently saying those words, was slightly stunned, and remained silent without responding. With no one left to stop them, will that day really come? Not being controlled by the script, not having her memories erased, not having to watch her fall in love with someone else. Tonkin thought he had accepted this outcome, but when Lu Nuyen said those words, he couldn't help but feel a ray of hope in his heart. He watched Yin's back disappear, then finally bowed his head, his face full of concern. But Lu Nuyen, I've been waiting for you for a long time, but I still can't be sure that you really love me? Or are you just confusing attachment with love? Otherwise, why have you never felt my feelings for you? He mumbled to himself upstairs. Ko's parents heard it from below, and they couldn't help but feel pain in their hearts. The two of them hurriedly went down, walked quickly to Tong Kan's side, and gently comforted him. What's wrong? Did you quarrel with him again? Tong Kan was originally just a little sad, but when he heard Ko's mother's gentle voice, his emotions could no longer be suppressed. He buried his head in her arms and burst into tears. Ko's parents didn't understand what was going on. If they wanted to comfort them, they didn't know where to start. They could only look at each other in confusion. In the end, they were helpless to avoid each other's eyes and gently patted him, waiting for his emotions to calm down. The next minute, Tong Kan had cried enough, still lying in Ko's mother's arms, only raising his head, the corners of his mouth drooping on his face, which still had a few tears that had not yet dried. Mom, Dad, what if that dream of mine comes true? At this time, Ko's parents understood that he was still insecure. Because of that dream, they suddenly felt funny. Because of a dream, he faked his death and ran abroad to live for 5 years. This story is already unbelievable enough, but now he has returned, but I still remember it forever. But when they met Tong Kan's warm eyes, the two immediately became serious again. Don't be afraid. No matter what happens, Mom and Dad will always be with you. When Lu Nuyen walked out of the living room, Chu then was coming from the garage. The moment he saw Nuyen's eyes, his breath couldn't help but tighten. Won't she find out anything? Thinking of this, Chu then looked back and forth between Nuyen and the garage with heavy eyes. Nuyen squinted her eyes and asked him, "What were you doing there?" "What can you do? I just felt bored, so I walked around." Chu then shook his head. Contact. Kogon immediately waved his hand and smiled wryly to hide it, then quickly tried to deflect it. Nuyen, have you finished talking to Kogon? It's not early anymore. Let's go home. Mentioning Kogon, Chu then hesitated a bit, wanted to say, but stopped. That year, he also saw Kogon's body. Even though the body had been soaked in sea water for 3 days and 3 nights to the point that its appearance was no longer clear, that's why that face was imprinted in his mind. That's Kogon, it can't be wrong. But if the body that year was Kogon, then who was the person he just saw at the villa? Could it be that there really is a ghost that causes such a mythical death and resurrection to happen? Nuyen, didn't Kogon pass away 5 years ago? So who is that person? Lu Nuyen just glanced at him and then walked out of the villa. When Chu then caught up with her, she tilted her head to warn him. He is not Kogon, but the adopted son of the Ko family, named Tong Kan. Chu then, you'd better put away your evil thoughts immediately. If something happens to him because of you, don't say the Ko family won't forgive you, and even I won't forgive you. You know clearly, I can do it if I say it. Chu then quickly shook his head and smiled approvingly. Nuyen, how could you do such things? Lu Nuyen did not say whether he believed or not, just continued walking. Chu then almost couldn't keep up with her footsteps, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride rising in his heart. Tong Kan's adopted son? If Chu then had some doubts before, then at this moment, he was completely sure of the guess in his heart. Name, appearance, and he was also the child of the Ko family. If he said this was not shady, who would believe it? How could there be such a coincidence in the world? Although I don't know what method Kogon used that year, it cannot be denied that 5 years ago he did indeed fake his death to leave. Now it's just a matter of changing another name and returning here. If you decided to fake your own death and leave, then why did you come back? Don't just die and be done with it. Why do I have to come back and fight for Lu Nuyen with me? But whether that person is Kogon or simply a coincidence, I will not let him return to Lu Nuyen's side. If he died, perhaps Nuyen would be heartbroken for a while, but time will erase everything. Wait until there's only me by her side. Sooner or later she'll love me. Thinking of this, Chu then turned his head to look towards the Ko family's villa. The corner of his lips curled up into a meaningful smile. Kogon, you should die? As long as you die, everything will be over. At the Ko family's villa, Tong Kan refused to return. Due to Kogon's status, his parents were reluctant to give in. If you don't use it, then that's it. Then, after a while, we will hold a party to officially announce your status as an adopted child. This will make it easier for you to travel outside in the future. Tongkin did not refuse this proposal, just nodded. Anyway, after returning home, he couldn't keep hiding in the villa and needed a legitimate identity to be able to act outside. From that day on, Lu Nu-yen did not see Tongkin again. She is looking for a way to escape control. Not long after, the news that the Ko family was about to hold a welcoming party for their new adopted child reached her ears. Receiving the invitation sent by Ko Jia, she hesitated for a moment before accepting it. She wanted to meet Tongkin, even if it was just from afar to look at him. The welcome party was held at the city's largest hotel. Almost all prestigious families received invitations, but no one had heard of the Ko family's suddenly appearing adopted child. Just looking at the preparations on such a luxurious scale, everyone can realize that the Ko family highly values this adopted son. This cannot help but arouse everyone's curiosity. Everyone wanted to see what kind of background this adopted son had. What kind of talent could make the Ko family prepare such a big party? On the day of the party, guests arrived at the hotel very early to wait for today's main character to appear. The hall has been splendidly decorated for a long time. Only the host of the party has not yet appeared. In the hall, groups of guests gathered in groups of 3 and 3, clinking glasses and chatting, not forgetting to complain about the Ko family. What's wrong with the Ko family today? They invited us here to introduce their newly adopted son, but we've been here for so long, and they still haven't shown up? That's right, the last time we held a party, the host always arrived the earliest. It's not the first time the Ko family held a party, so why would they be so negligent? In a corner of the room, Lu Nu-yen quietly listened to everyone's gossip. An indescribable insecurity suddenly arose in my heart. She frowned, her fingers unconsciously tightening the glass in her hand. The parents of Ko and Tong can have not yet appeared. This situation is too unusual. A terrifying guess vaguely appeared in her heart. Some people with close relationships with the Ko family also discovered something was wrong at this time. That's not right. It's been so long, and they still haven't come. Has something happened? Or should we try contacting them? That's right. Let's call and ask, one person in the group said, then took out his phone and was about to call Mr. Ko when new news suddenly appeared on the screen. This afternoon, on road number 1, there was a serious traffic accident. 3 people in the car, 2 men and 1 woman, were seriously injured and taken to the emergency room. The initial cause was determined to be a brake failure. Isn't road number 1 the road from the Ko family's villa to the hotel? Furthermore, the information 2 men and 1 woman is no different than clearly telling everyone that the people in the accident were the 3 people of the Ko family who have not yet appeared. Lu Nu-yen immediately stood up. Reason completely disappeared as he quickly walked out of the hotel. She just took out her phone and called someone. Help me find out which hospital the 3 people who had an accident were taken to this afternoon. As soon as she received the text message about the address, she sat in the car, glanced at the address, and without delay immediately started the car and sped towards the hospital. As he planned, but at this time Kogan died. Kogan became the untouchable bright moonlight in Lu Nu-yen's heart. As for him, just because he once targeted Kogan, she completely hated him. Even though she was still with Nu-yen, in her eyes, he was nothing more than air. Chu then waited another 5 years, thinking he would finally get what he wanted. But Kogan once again returned. He wanted Kogan to die, wanted the whole Ko family to go to hell with Kogan, but his actions were discovered by Lu Nu-yen. He was imprisoned in this dark room for a week, not seeing sunlight. Immediately, under her torture, even eating became a luxury. He had fallen so far, but Kogan and the Ko family safely survived. Chu then carries immense resentment and indignation in his heart, with no way to relieve it. He clenched his teeth so hard that the smell of blood flowed from his lips, but in his extreme hunger and thirst, when he tasted blood, there was only one thought left in his mind. I'm very thirsty. Then, he raised his hand that was blinded and fiercely bit his wrist. On the other side, Lu Nu-yen was driving to the hospital, but suddenly a sharp pain hit her head, causing her hands to suddenly loosen the steering wheel and lose control. The car drove straight towards a tree on the side of the road. The shrill sound of the horn rang in my ears. Her head hit the steering wheel hard because of inertial force, a shrill scream, and the sound of glass shattering. While her consciousness gradually blurred, she also heard the sound of liquid dripping to the ground. Are you about to die? Just as her consciousness was completely plunged into darkness, a mechanical voice suddenly rang in her ears. Warning! Warning! The male and female protagonists are in danger of their lives. Their vitals are low. The world is about to collapse. What is the male and female lead? Who is talking? Is this a hallucination before death? Before Lu Nu Yin could think, her consciousness was completely lost. When she woke up, she discovered she was in a strange space. A series of lines of code hovering in space. She tried to touch it, but her hand went straight through that string of data. At this moment, a block of light slowly flew in front of her. After scanning her body, a series of satisfying dots suddenly appeared on the data strings, abnormal data that needed to be purified, and purification began. The voice of the mass of light was cold, without any emotion, just mechanically performing its duty. Immediately after that, Lu Nu Yin felt the pain coming again. At the same time, she realizes her memories are being erased. All memories between her and Ko Gon are being erased by an invisible force. Panic spread in Nu Yin's heart. She wanted to escape this place, but was completely helpless. She wanted to resist, but she couldn't even touch that block of light. What made her more desperate were the next words of the light block. The feelings between the male and female protagonists are abnormal and need to be purified and rewritten. This female protagonist has feelings for the male supporting character, which needs to be purified and rewritten. The female protagonist has murderous intentions towards the male protagonist, which needs to be purified and rewritten. Hearing this, Lu Nu Yin suddenly raised her head, eyes filled with anger, stared at the light block, gritted her teeth, and asked each word. You guys are the ones who controlled me? I am the female lead with murderous intent towards the male lead? Is the male lead Chu then? And the male supporting role is Ko Gon. The voice of the light block seemed to pause a bit before Nu Yin's question. A moment later, it continued its mechanical voice. The system is only responsible for maintaining the normal functioning of this world. Doesn't answer your question. It was also because of the pause of the block of light and the silence of no response that Lu Nu Yin was completely certain that his judgment was correct. An unreasonable feeling rose from the bottom of her heart. Everyone will feel helpless when they know that the world they live in is just a world controlled by others. But at this moment, Lu Nu Yin suddenly remembered the words she heard before falling into a coma. The male and female leads are in a dangerous situation. Their vital signs are weak. The world is about to collapse. So at that time, it wasn't that she heard wrong, but that she and Chu then were both in danger. This world was about to collapse, and that's why they pulled her into this space to check. Thinking of this, Lu Nu Yin slightly moved her eyes. She once thought that if Ko Gon faked her own death once, she could escape control. So you only need to do it once and change to another identity, and you will no longer be controlled. But before she could find an opportunity to experiment, the opportunity to completely escape control appeared right before her eyes. Because if the death of the hero and heroine will cause the world to collapse, and the Order claims that the system only cares about the world running normally, then she can negotiate. Let me go? I don't need to be some kind of heroine. I just want to be with Ko Gon. Lu Nu Yin gasped, afraid that the system would react and continue to erase her memory. If she really forgot Ko Gon and became a puppet living under someone else's control, then she would rather die. The system's light blinked once, seemingly not understanding what she said, but she immediately opened her mouth again. You can erase my memory, but you can't erase my love for Ko Gon. Even though I've forgotten everything now, when I go out I will definitely remember it. The person I really love is not the male lead you installed. At that time, if you force me to follow the story, I will definitely commit suicide. The system is rarely silent. It danced around Nu Yin. After a long while, it finally spoke, no longer repeating mechanical orders. Isn't it good to be the female lead? You can have opportunities that everyone would envy and countless assets. There is a male lead who loves you. As long as you want, you can become the strongest person in this world. The gentle voice carried an admonishing tone, hoping that the person in front of him could understand its meaning. As long as Nu Yin accepts the memory erasure and gets back on track, she will have everything she wants, just without love for a male partner. What a pity. Lu Nu Yin was completely not tempted. She firmly shook her head, her eyes determined. I don't need anything. I just want to be with Ko Gon. Even if she would lose everything she had before, she would not regret it. Why doesn't the system understand human emotions? It just knows that this choice in its eyes is not a beneficial choice. But she nodded, without regret, but Kogan would definitely die. The meaning of her existence is to complete the relationship between her and the male lead, and will eventually die at the hands of the female lead. The system's words made Lu Nuyen feel cold. She stood still, her mind blank. So even though Kogan faked his death once, he still had to reach the predetermined ending? The system looked at Nuyen's bewildered expression and was immediately satisfied with the bad pleasure. Although the mass of light did not show its expression, the dancing rhythm showed its satisfaction. At this time, who told Nuyen to dare to threaten it? Since its birth in this dimension, it has managed many worlds. Just a female protagonist in a small world, no big deal. If necessary, you can change someone else to be the female lead. This thought suddenly stopped. Its dancing rhythm also stopped. Isn't that right? Doesn't Nuyen still not want to be the female lead? The system stopped for a moment. The data almost became a mess. Then suddenly, he broke this situation, pretended to see through the plot's progress, and did not continue to tease Lu Nuyen anymore. Oh my, Guyen actually completed the plot and died last year. When she heard this sentence from the system, Lu Nuyen suddenly woke up. It turned out that the sentence the system said about Kogan definitely dying was exactly what he had said to her before. She breathed a sigh of relief, but the system's attention turned back to her. What you have now is all thanks to the aura brought by this role as a female lead. If you really decide to give up your role as a female lead, when you return to the real world, you will have nothing left. Not everyone has the opportunity like Tong can, to become the only son of a billionaire. If you proactively give up your role as the female lead, someone else will take your position. You won't even be able to keep your name, just like Kogan. If you are Kogan, then you will have to face death. If you are Tong Kan, a character who has never been mentioned, then the price to pay is that you will have nothing left. The system thought that its words could scare Lu Nuyen, but unexpectedly, she still nodded firmly. I voluntarily give up the title of female lead. Voluntarily give up everything I get from that title. Definitely have no regrets. Are you sure you don't regret it? The system once again confirmed, and Nuyen's answer remained unchanged. Definitely no regrets. At that moment, Tonkin woke up. The nurse said that Lu Nuyen would come, but until the day he and his parents were discharged from the hospital, she had never appeared. He thought the nurse had lied to him, but later learned that Lu Nuyen had been in a car accident and was seriously injured, almost not surviving. He was startled and quickly asked the nurse to take him to visit. In the intensive care room, Lu Nuyen was in a coma, with only the thin bones on the ventilator's mask and the dancing electrocardiogram proving she was still alive. According to the nurse, Nuyen lost consciousness while driving to see him that day, leading to the accident. This makes him feel very guilty, meeting again after 5 years. In fact, he never treated Nuyen well, because he never felt her love for him. But now, looking at her lying on the hospital bed, lifeless, pain filled his heart. When he and his parents had an accident, she came to take care of him. But when she had an accident, it wasn't until she had fully recovered that he learned about it. Sorry, Lu Nuyen. Actually, Nuyen doesn't owe him anything. Love back then was forced. Nuyen doesn't like him. It's normal. Tonkin bowed his head. His voice choked, but his eyes glanced at her hand. There seems to be some movement. Tonkin was suddenly startled and quickly pressed the nurse call button. Not long after, the doctor rushed over. Lu Nuyen woke up. When she opened her eyes, the doctor had left, leaving only the nurse to instruct a man. She turned her head to look in that direction. Lu Nuyen was stunned for a moment when he saw that face. Kogan, a person who died 5 years ago. No, that's not right. She remembered the Ko family's welcoming party a few days ago. I just realized that he is that adopted son. Nuyen frowned, instinctively not liking the Ko family. Seeing that he was about to approach, she quickly stopped him. What are you doing here? The familiar yet unfamiliar voice made Tonkin stunned, not expecting her to react like that. He was about to explain, but immediately realized something was unusual. She is not Lu like Yen, or more precisely, not the Lu like Yen of the past, who said she loved him and was willing to walk towards him without any obstacles. It's Lu Nuyen of the original story, who absolutely hates Kogan. Upon realizing this, Tong Kin immediately regained her expression and thanked her for helping me and my parents when we had an accident. I'll give you your money back. After saying that, he didn't wait for Yin's reaction, immediately turned around and left. Leaving the hospital room, Tong Kin's steps gradually slowed down. If Lu Yiyin has now become Lu Yiyin in the original story, then where is the former Lu Yiyin, the girl who loved him? Maybe it disappeared? Tong Kin walked out of the hospital a little sadly. His parents were waiting in the car. Seeing him like that, they thought that Lu Yin was seriously injured, so they couldn't help but worry and ask a few questions. Unexpectedly, he just shook his head. His parents couldn't ask clearly why, so they had to go home. But when we got back to the Ko family's villa, the car that was supposed to go to the garage stopped in front of the villa door. Master, madam, young master, there seems to be someone at the door. Hearing the driver say that, the three of them were a little suspicious and looked out. Indeed, there was a thin figure sitting curled up. Because they couldn't see his face clearly, Ko's parents naturally assumed that he was a beggar. While he was frowning and preparing to chase her away, Tong Kin suddenly had an idea and stopped his parents' actions. Immediately got out of the car and saw Tong Kin walking straight towards the beggar. Ko's parents had no time to stop him and had to get out of the car as well. Tong Kin stood in front of that person and asked, "Who are you? Why are you here?" The beggar raised his head, revealing the face he had liked for many years. When she saw it was him, her eyes immediately showed joy. "Tong Kin, I said I would come to you without any obstacles. I have done it. From now on, I am no longer the heroine Lu like Yin, I am just Tamo So. But the price I have to pay is that I have nothing left. So do you want to buy me back? As long as you pay for food and accommodation, I can warm your bed." Hearing her say that, Tong Kin immediately understood that Lu Yin was the female lead. She wanted to follow her own plot. Therefore, Lu, like Yin, loved him before. Now he has become Tamo So, with nothing left in his hands. He smiled at her, nodded. "Okay, but I have a lot of requests. If you can't do it, I won't accept it."